Time for convening having arrived. The Senate will come to order. Would ask unauthorized visitors to exit the chamber at this time, and the Senate will come to order. Chair recognizes Senator from the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. President. The journal has been read and found to be correct.
Thank you, Senator, for your good works on the journal. Is there objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? The reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection? Confirmation of journal? Chair hears none. The journal is confirmed. All senators having bills and resolutions introduced, please bring them to the Secretary's desk at this time. First reading and reference of Senate bills and resolutions.
Senate Bill 148 by Senator Harbison of the 15th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 2. Senate Bill 149 by Senator Harbison of the 15th and others. A bill
Government
to be entitled
oversight.
Senate Bill 150 by Senators Harbison of the 15th and others.
Higher education.
Senate Bill 151 by Senators Harbison of the 15th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 2 of
Higher
Article
education.
2. Senate Bill 152 by Senators Davis of the 22nd and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 28 of the OCGA relating to apportionment.
Reapportionment.
Senate Bill 153 by Senators Henson of the 41st and others. A bill to be entitled
Regulated industry.
Senate Bill 154 by Senator Fort of the 39th. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 2.
Transportation.
Senate Bill 155 by Senators Gooch of the 51st and
Higher
others.
education.
Senate Bill 156 by Senators Tollison of the 20th and others.
Natural resources.
Senate Bill 157 by Senator Albers of the 56th and others.
Finance.
Senate Bill 158 by Senators Orrick of the 36th and others.
Health and Human Services.
Senate Bill 159 by Senator Ligon of the 3rd and others.
Judiciary.
Senate Bill 160 by Senators Ginn of the 47th and others. A bill to be entitled
Slogo General.
Senate Resolution 222 by Senators Davis of the 22nd and others.
Reapportionment.
Senate Resolution 228 by Senators Schaefer of the 48th and others. A resolution requesting...
Rules Committee.
Through with the order, Mr. President.
First reading and reference of House bills and resolutions.
House Bill 101 by Representative Epps of the 144th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 26-2-370 of the OCGA relating to definitions relative to food service establishments so as to exclude
agriculture.
House Resolution 4 by Representatives Geisinger of the 48th and others. A resolution proposing...
Judiciary.
Through with the order, Mr. President.
Clerk will read reports of standing committees.
Mr. President, the Senate Health and Human Services Committee has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. That House Bill 57 do pass, that Senate Bill 10 do pass, that Senate Bill 13 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Unterman of the 45th. Mr. President, the Senate Public Safety Committee has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. That Senate Bill 74 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Carter of the 1st. Mr. President, the Senate Regulated Industries and Utilities Committee has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation, that Senate Bill 117 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Murphy of the 27th. Mr. President, the Senate State Institutions and Property Committee has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation, that Senate Resolution 113 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Albers of the 56th. Mr. President, the State and Local Governmental Operations Committee has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation, that Senate Bill 83 do pass, that Senate Bill 104 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Ligon of the 3rd. Through with the order, Mr. President.
Clerk will read bills and resolutions for the second time.
Senate Bill 4 by Senator Carter of the 1st. Elections and primaries, nonpartisan elections of clerks of Superior Court. Senate Bill 5 by Senator Carter of the 1st. Elections and primaries, nonpartisan elections, district attorneys. Senate Bill 6 by Senator Carter of the 1st. Elections and primaries, nonpartisan elections, sheriffs. Senate Bill 8 by Senator Carter of the 1st and others. Elections and primaries, nonpartisan elections, tax commissioners, tax receivers, and tax collectors. Senate Bill 9 by Senator Carter of the 1st. Elections and primaries, nonpartisan elections, solicitors general. Senate Bill 54 by Senator Carter of the 1st. Elections, provide for nonpartisan election of coroners qualifying. Senate Bill 97 by Senator Wilkinson of the 50th and others. Agricultural Commodity Commission for Beef, create membership and powers. Senate Resolution 9 by Senator James of the 35th. Economic Development Department of urge to promote and strengthen ties with African nations. Through with the order, Mr. President.
It's now time for the morning roll call. Time for the morning roll call. Are there motions to excuse? Chair recognizes Senator of the 44th first.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 35th.
35th. Without objection, the senator will be excused. Chair recognizes the distinguished senator from the 56th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 37th for business inside the Capitol.
37th. Without objection, the senator would have been excused, but it looks like he has arrived. Chair recognizes the distinguished majority whip, senator from the 18th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 16th for business away from the Capitol.
16th, still taking care of that little baby. Without objection, the senator from the 16th will be excused. Any other motions to excuse? Senators, signify your presence by voting the yea switch. Secretary will unlock the machine. It's now time for our morning devotion, and I am surrounded by my three little Valentines today, and I could not be more pleased to have Cameron, Grace, and Katie here, not only guests of the Lieutenant Governor, but also guests of the Senator from the 17th, and they are actually going to lead us in our pledge, and then after they lead us in our pledge, we're going to have the senator from the 17th to introduce our chaplain of the day. So, ladies, are you ready? All right, let's do the American flag first, okay? All right. I pledge allegiance to the American flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now the Georgia flag.
I pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag and to the principles for which it stands, wisdom, justice, and moderation.
Let's give these ladies a great round of applause. You did wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much. Senator?
Thank you, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate. It is my pleasure and honor today to introduce the pastor of the day, Mr. Al O'Quinn. Al was born and raised in Dublin, Georgia. He spent his teenage years in the halls of Dublin High School. That's where he met his wife, Deborah, who is with us here today. They have two children, Matt and Laura. He went to Bruton Parker College, where he received his associate's degree. He then went on to Georgia College, where he received his bachelor's degree in psychology. Al went on to Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary, where he received his master's degree in divinity. Al just completed 23 years as a senior pastor at Bethany Baptist Church in McDonough. In 2002, Bethany Church was recognized as one of the healthiest churches at the Southern Baptist Convention. Let's give a warm welcome to one of Henry County's finest, and as we know him, Brother Al.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor and Senator Jeffries. It's an honor to be with you today. If for no other reason, to remind you tomorrow's Valentine's Day. Don't forget your spouse or your significant other. Please remember. Today, I just want to give a word to you of encouragement to all of us. I think we're always having to work on attitude. We drive into the rain today. Did well till we got to the light on Fulton Street. And suddenly, Do we stay calm? Do we get an attitude? What do? We're always having to work on our attitude. We say people need an attitude adjustment. It was said by Albert Einstein, weakness of attitude becomes weakness of character. And so our perfect model as a believer for me is Jesus Christ. And the scripture says in Philippians chapter 2, verse 5, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. Let this attitude be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. And so as he is our model, what do we see in him? We see humility, we see service, we see sacrifice, but the virtues of love and joy and peace and gentleness and kindness, wonderful, wonderful attributes as they come forth in attitude. Let this mind be in you, attitude which is in Christ Jesus. And so we all have an attitude. But have you ever blamed someone for your attitude? Sure we do. They made me lose my cool. They made me lose my attitude, get a bad disposition. No, they didn't. You know, we choose our attitude. We choose our disposition. And whatever's in us comes out when we get rattled. You know, when you squeeze a tube of toothpaste, what comes out? Toothpaste, that's what was in the tube. Now, you know, as elected officials and working with the public, as a minister, as educators, our work would be great sometimes if you didn't have to work with people, you know. But there are people, real people. And sometimes they have a call, they feel, to push our buttons. And when they push our buttons, how do we respond? The key is our focal point. Our focal point is upward. Seek those things which are above, where Christ Jesus sits at the right hand of God the Father. Let us have an attitude that produces a fragrance, an aroma that is appealing and attracts people, not an attitude and disposition that is kind of disgusting, repels people. No one wants to be around us. Kind of like this. I was standing in the line at the supermarket, and I was buying groceries, being checked out, and the lady behind the register said, Brother Al, you sure have a great smell today. You smell really nice today. What is that you have on, that cologne? I said, it's Dracar. She said, oh, that smells really wonderful. That's good. The gentleman back in the groceries beside her said, I've been working beside you for 2 weeks. You've never asked me about my smell, my scent, my aroma. She said, okay, what are you wearing? He said, Old Spice. She said, that's why I never asked you. Well, listen, there's nothing wrong with Old Spice. I wear Old Spice. The idea is our disposition and our attitude produces a fragrance and aroma. The Bible says for us as believers, let your life produce the aroma of Christ. In our disposition and attitude, we produce an aroma that is appealing, or it is an attitude that causes people to walk away very, very disappointed. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. Let's pray. Father, thank you for these elected officials, for the roles they play, serving this state. Lord, looking after our interest. We pray you'd give them wisdom. We pray, Father, you would guide and direct them in every decision. And for all of us, as we encounter one another, people, Lord, help us to have good attitude. And help us to work on our attitude constantly by you being our focal point. Lord, give us strength and stamina, and may your virtues of love and gentleness and kindness flow from us to others. We pray this in the name of Christ. Amen.
Like to recognize the senator from the 17th to recognize some very special guests in the gallery. Senator?
I forgot to mention that today is Henry County Day, so if I could get all the people in the gallery from Henry County to stand up. Let's recognize them. Thank you.
Glad to have Henry County's finest with us today. Are there any unanimous consents? Secretary will read two resolutions.
Senate Resolution 224 by Senators Jones of the 10th and Jeffries of the 17th, a resolution recognizing and commending Kay Pippen on the occasion of her retirement and for other purposes. Whereas Mrs. Kay Pippen has served faithfully and effectively as President and CEO of the Henry County Chamber of Commerce since 2002, and whereas she is united in love and marriage to Darrell Pippen and is blessed with one wonderful son and one beloved daughter. And whereas prior to her tenure as President and CEO, she served for over 30 years as an effective lobbyist and passionate advocate for Georgia's public school employees and public education. And whereas it is abundantly fitting and proper that the outstanding accomplishments of this remarkable and distinguished Georgian be appropriately recognized. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body commend Mrs. Kay Pippen for her dedicated public service to the state of Georgia and her spirit of optimism and enthusiasm for her community, congratulate her upon the grand occasion of her retirement, and extend to her their most sincere best wishes for continued health and happiness. Senate Resolution 223 by Senators Jones of the 10th and Jeffries of the 17th, a resolution recognizing February 13, 2013 as Henry County Day at the state capitol and for other purposes. Whereas founded in 1821 and named after Patrick Henry, the 324-mile area of Henry County is home to an estimated 180,000 Georgians living in major cities such as McDonough, Stockbridge, Locust Grove, and Hampton. And whereas the county seat of Henry County is McDonough, a city named after Commodore Thomas McDonough, and whereas Henry County attracts sports fans from around the state and country each year with events like the Chick-fil-A Charity Golf Classic and 2 major NASCAR events at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body recognize the great achievements of Henry County and its citizens and recognize February 13, 2013 as Henry County Day at the state capitol. Through with the order, Mr. President.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolutions? Chair hears none, and the resolutions are adopted. It's my honor now to call upon the distinguished senator to speak to the resolutions and honor not only Henry County Day here at the state capitol, but also a wonderful Georgian in Kay Pippen.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, members of this chamber. It is not too often that I get a chance to celebrate someone that is so dear to all of us that call Henry County home. It is my honor to join with the senator from the 17th in recognizing Kay Pippen, who is soon to be retired from the Henry County Chamber of Commerce as its president for the last 10 years. Prior to serving as president of the Henry County Chamber of Commerce, Ms. Pippins spent about 18 years up here roaming around the halls of this chamber. She is a strong, strong advocate for education. She is a person with boundless energy, and she's been known to work sometimes 50, 60, and even 70 hours a week. In introducing Kay, I had to go and get a quote from her husband, Darrell, who couldn't be here today because he's a dedicated educator himself, along with her daughter, who's also an educator. But I'm glad to have present with Kay her son, Andy Pippin, who is the city manager over in Hampton, Georgia. According to her husband, Darrell, his comments, he said, I've appreciated Kay's commitment to her family, her job, and the community. She is going to retire, and I'll be very glad to have her back. Those are direct quotes from her husband. Both Kay and Darrell met at Eagle Rock. Kay was giving a speech to a group of teachers, and Darrell was in the audience. You know, after her speech, he asked her to go dancing, and I'm not going to tell you how many years ago that's been. But he only had enough money to buy her a drink, so he would fill his can with water when he got her a new beer, and he also gave Kay his shoes so she could take off her heels. The rest, I understand, is history. Several years ago, former Speaker of the House, Tom Murphy, took Kay under his wings and gave her an office in the Capitol. It was a desk, I understand, in a hall corner underneath a stairwell. But I understand he didn't give you a chair along with that desk. You know, Kay's ability to remember people, to put people together, to bridge relationships, cultures, races, sexes, political parties, and to me, that's what's made her a force, not just in Henry County, but across the great state of Georgia. I've always known Kay to be fair, honest, and the smartest person in any room that she enters. She knows the political structure and environment of Georgia better than any consultant could dream. Now, if you plan on running for office, particularly in the Henry County area, you better check with Kay first. She will be greatly missed as president of the chamber, a position I had the good fortune of chairing some 12 years ago. And throughout the entire family of Henry County, and those up there that is present here today, and they're all friends of ours, as the senator from the 17th will share with you. But we are just delighted to celebrate her on this day during her retirement as chair. But I know you're not leaving us, Kay, because you have too much energy and you're too smart. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your service to Henry County, but more importantly, thank you for your service to the great state of Georgia. Please join me in recognizing Kay Pippin.
Oh, wow. Wow. Thank you. Gee, when I was a lonely lobbyist out there begging Senator Hill to look at us fairly in that budget, and Bill Jackson, and oh my gosh, I better stop naming. I can go all the way across the room. It's so wonderful to see so many good friends out there today. I love this process. I love democracy, and I love to watch it in action, and you know as I do that you either love this process or you hate it. That's usually the two mediums, but it was wonderful to be a part of this process for so many years, and it has been icing on the cake to have the opportunity to serve the great county of Henry County for the last 10.5 years. In case you don't know where that is, it's just straight down I-75, 8 exits on I-75. Stop by the chamber and we'll give you an O. Henry bar and welcome you with open arms. Thank you very much. You've honored me greatly. I do want to introduce to you my guest. And first of all, you met my son. This is Andy. He is the city manager of Hampton, Georgia. And next to him is the chairman of the Chamber's Board of Directors, and this is Eddie Osmond. And next to him is Danny Brown, and Danny is the immediate past chair of our Chamber's Board of Directors. I think I can see some fraternity brothers putting it together out there from UGA about knowing some of these faces. And standing behind all of these folks, I hesitate to say this, but I'm going to say it, is a state senator that I've actually diapered, Burt Jones. known Bert since the day he was born, and he is a fine young man, and we're all proud of him. And to my right is one of my own family members, Richard Crumley, who is here representing his business, and he is often in your halls, and he is my nephew from North Georgia. I like to say that now that all the power is in Gainesville, Georgia, that I originated from Gainesville, but actually it was a few miles up the road in Cleveland, and now I'm part of the a little further south. But I want to thank you all one more time, and most importantly, and thank you, Henry County, but most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for caring enough about your communities and about this state to offer yourselves for public service. It is not an easy role, and I respect you greatly for doing that. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Yeah, let's pose for a picture. Good job.
Thank you, sir.
I love that little Bert.
Secretary will read a resolution.
Senate Resolution 126 by Senators Unterman in the 45th and others. A resolution recognizing Wednesday, February 13, 2013 as Lupus Awareness Day and for other purposes. Whereas lupus is an acute, chronic, and lifelong autoimmune disease in which the immune system is unbalanced, causing inflammation and tissue damage to virtually every organ system in the body. And whereas lupus can affect any part of the body, including the skin, lungs, heart, kidneys, and brain, causing seizures, strokes, heart attacks, miscarriages, and organ failure. And whereas at least 1.5 million Americans, including approximately 55,000 Georgians, are currently living with lupus. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body commend the work of the Lupus Foundation of America and other organizations devoted to finding a cure for lupus and to supporting the individuals and families whose lives are affected by this autoimmune disease, and recognize Wednesday, February 13, 2013 as Lupus Awareness Day at the State Capitol. Through with the order, Mr. President.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. It's my honor now to call upon the distinguished senator from the 45th, who has shown great passion in not only educational issues, but other efforts pertaining to lupus. Senator?
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. We are in a sea of purple today in honor of Lupus Day here at the Capitol. We have this every year at the Capitol, and is to raise awareness. We have lots of folks up in the gallery, and if you have on your desk your little purple bracelet. And a lot of people don't understand what lupus is, and it's an autoimmune disease. And it's kind of a foreign disease that's out there, and people don't feel comfortable about it. But the immune system is compromised, and it fights off viruses and bacteria. Today we have a special person here, Natalie, who is only 16 years old, and unfortunately she has lupus. and we're going to hear from her. But one of the things I want to point out, most of these patients are taken care of by rheumatologists because the symptoms kind of mimic arthritis. And it's a disease that once you have it forever. And it comes and goes, and that's one of the things that makes it the most difficult part of the disease process. So we're going to hear from Natalie, and I especially want you to go downstairs and visit the booth down on the south wing and get some information and share that information with your family and your loved ones. Natalie?
Good morning. My name is Natalie Bates, and I'm 16 years old. I was diagnosed with lupus when I was 12, and living with lupus is very challenging. I missed many days of school because of lupus. I have a lot of pain, toxic meds, and I'm tired and scared. I fear that I won't be able to do the job I've been dreaming of due to my disease. Lupus affects mostly young women ages 18 to 45, but also children, teens, men, and women of all ages. Our greatest challenge is the lack of understanding and awareness, as patients often don't look sick. I am honored to be a part of the Georgia chapter of the Lupus Foundation of America in the fight against lupus. And all I ask is that whenever health legislation comes across your desk, please think about lupus and think about me and the many Georgians with lupus. Thank you for your time.
Chair recognizes the Senator from the 39th on a point of personal privilege.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, I rise on a point of personal privilege to discuss an issue that has affected all of our districts. But in order to talk about this issue, I want to make reference, Senator from the 33rd, about something that happened 10 years ago this very month. 10 years ago in 2003, the legislature with the governor's signature, undid the strongest consumer protection law in the history of this country, the strongest anti-predatory lending law in the history of this country. And as a matter of fact, ironically, it has been a Georgia, and what happened 10 years ago this month in February and March of 2003 has been chronicled in about 8 or 9 books, 3 or 4 documentaries, and there is an approach. There are a lot of people who think that that law, if that law had been left in place and had been replicated in other states, we would not have had the housing bubble that crashed in 2008. So. But I look forward, I look backward in order to move forward, because we are reaping the whirlwind and the consequences of what happened in 2003. Georgia is generally number 4 in the rate of foreclosures in this country. After California, Nevada, and Florida were usually number 4. But last summer, Georgia went to number 1 in the summer of 2012 in the number of foreclosures. And this year, the zip code 30045 was the number 1 zip code in foreclosures in the country in January. There have been many proposals on how to mitigate the impact of foreclosures. And one of the programs that came a little bit late was the Home Safe program, a federal program where Georgia got $335 million to help the unemployed and underemployed stay in their homes, make payments for a period of months. And I'll be very honest with you, and in all sincerity, I was hopeful that the Home Safe program would work. So much so that I had 2 town hall meetings with the senator from the 38th in my district and invited the commissioner, and he came out on a Saturday morning, bless his heart, with his grandson, Commissioner Beatty, came to my district so that people could find out about the Home Safe program. So I have not been critical of DCA generally until now, because we have enough data. We have enough research to indicate whether DCA and the Home Safe program has been successful. Let me quote you some stats. In the first quarter of 2011, the approval rate that DCA gave to Home Safe applications to keep people in their foreclosed homes was 9.28%. That's a 90% turndown rate. And we were hopeful, and we worked with DCA to make it better. But the third quarter of 2012, the turndown rate is almost 90%. Only 10.86 applications were approved. As I stand here, I can only say that the administration's efforts in the Home Safe program to help people who are being foreclosed on is an unmitigated disaster, a failure of epic proportions. As foreclosures have gone up and $339 million of money injected into the system, it has been an unmitigated failure. And the first $120 million was restricted money, fairly restricted money. The last $240 million has very few restrictions on applicants and how they qualify. So we can say, well, the first $120 million would have been hard to push out the door. But $250 million has been made available of unrestricted money, and the administration has not used it wisely. There are other things going on that we hope the administration will figure out. We were very concerned when $108 million of settlement money went to the One Georgia program. It was supposed to be used to mitigate foreclosures, but $108 million went into One Georgia in a trickle-down kind of approach. I've introduced the bill to institute judicial foreclosures here in the state of Georgia. And I don't know how far that bill is going to go, but we've got to have some solutions. The money is there, it's not getting out to the people. If my solution is not the right solution, then the administration and the other side needs to do what? It needs to provide a solution. Because it is not, at least to me, it is not acceptable that Georgia not help its citizens in this time of crisis. We're still in a housing crisis. That's why this evening we've scheduled a hearing to discuss these issues from 7 to 8:30 here in the state capitol in the room 125, so we can hear from citizens and professionals as to how we have gotten to this sorry state. I don't know if I've covered my 5 minutes, so I'm going to hurry. One last thing. We have heard, we got into this mess because Wall Street securitized mortgages. Let me tell you what's coming. We have learned from the industry that Wall Street is thinking of securitizing rental properties, Senator from the 33rd. If you think the bubble was big and brittle in 2008, just wait till Wall Street starts securitizing rental properties. They're focusing on 3 pilot cities, and one of those pilot cities here in the city of Atlanta. If it's successful here in Atlanta, it's going to come to your neighborhoods, it's going to come to your districts. Foreclosures in the and the impact of them are widespread in our communities.
Time.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've been called time. This discussion will go on. We'll be back here to talk about foreclosures and the citizens that we represent and the impact on them. Thank you.
Senator from the 38th. You have the doctor of the day. I'd like to present the doctor of the day, and to do so, it's my honor to call upon the distinguished senator from the 38th.
Good morning, colleagues. Mr. President, thank you. Our doctor of the day is David Blake. He is a native of Bronx, New York, and graduated from Northside High School here in Atlanta. He completed his pre-medical curriculum from Howard University in Washington, D.C., before attending and receiving his medical degree from Morehouse School of Medicine here in Atlanta. In 2011, he was acknowledged as the Morehouse School of Medicine's Distinguished Alumni of the Year at their annual alumni dinner. He is the medical director of a multi-care holistic health center, as well as Family First Healthcare in Lithia Springs. He has served as president and chairman of the board for the Atlanta Medical Association. He is a member of a multi-medical association and a diplomat of the American Board of Family Medicine. Dr. Blake speaks on healthcare issues specific to the African American community, such as hypertension, heart disease, prostate cancer, and Alzheimer's. He is the father of 4 beautiful daughters: Alexandra, a rising junior, pre-med major at University of Georgia, Adrian, Ariel, and Brianna. Let's welcome him, and as I said yesterday, we don't want any of you to end up downstairs, but you've got a well-qualified physician to take care of you if you do. Thank you. Dr. Blake.
Good morning, Senators. Thank you, Senator Tate. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Thank you all for your service, giving your time, energy, and effort to our great state and helping to maintain the health care of our citizens. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to serve as your doctor of the day. As you heard, I've practiced medicine not just here in the city of Atlanta, but throughout the state as well, delivering emergency medicine care in Reidsville, Georgia specifically. And what I have found is that we have a lot of underserved people in our great state who unfortunately don't have access to health care. So that whatever you can do to help us to improve that will be well appreciated and well needed by our patients throughout the state, so we can continue to take care of everybody who is in need of health care in the great state of Georgia. Thank you again for your service.
Thank you so much. Let's pose for a picture. I'd like to recognize in the gallery today, we have some University of Georgia law students that are present, observing upon the lawmakers of this great state. Would you please stand as we recognize you? It's an honor to have each of you with us today. Thank you. Chair recognizes Senator on the 56th point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't often rise on a point of personal privilege, but I do so today out of concern. I have been here for a few years now, and it is a true honor to serve. But I've heard much discussion over the last few years, and even more so this year, that give me cause to pause. I've talked to different folks who've been elected to this body and across the hall that have been afraid to support certain topics. Although their constituents may support it, they're afraid others in our body or the other may not. I've heard words like, well, my constituents want it, but it's somebody's bill, so I should be more careful. Or I know it's right, but I probably can't support it. Whether it's someone in our body here or in the hallway, we're elected to be leaders, not followers. You're here to carry the water of your constituents, not others in the hall or in the chamber. It's okay to make difficult decisions, Problems don't go away by themselves. They actually elected us to fix them. Whether you're measuring your tenure here today by the days, years, or decades you've served, let's make sure we lead with courage and purpose and clarity. Thank you, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 38th for point of personal privilege.
Good morning, colleagues, again. And I'm going to use the senator from the 56th, Lead with Purpose. I want to talk to you today about a constituent of mine. His name is Reverend Dr. Joseph Eccles Lowry. My office is actually located on Lowry Boulevard, named after him, and he was the minister of my church. He is a celebrated civil rights leader and serves as a steadfast champion of nonviolence resistance and human rights. He has overcome childhood adversities of police brutality, tyranny by the Ku Klux Klan, and prejudice, utilizing these experiences to shape his social conscience and life's work. A graduate of Payne College in Augusta, Lowry began his civil rights leadership with the Montgomery bus boycott and has continued his crusade for equality and justice for over 5 decades. Soon after the genesis of his activism, he would be one of 4 targets of a historic libel suit by the state of Alabama. Though innocent, Reverend Lowry, Abernathy, Shuttlesworth, and C. were found guilty and ordered to pay $3 million. The U.S. Supreme Court later vindicated the ministers in a milestone ruling of libel. In spite of often being subjected to police and militia violence, as well as imprisonment during his activism, Reverend Lowry would not be silenced. A renowned minister, Reverend Lowry helped organize the Southern Christian Leadership Conference alongside Dr. Martin Luther King in 1957. After King's assassination in 1968, Reverend Lowry relocated to Atlanta to assume the pastorship of Central United Methodist Church and served as chairman of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. In 1977, he succeeded Ralph David Abernathy as president of SCLC, and from 1986 until his retirement in 1992, he served as pastor of Cascade United Methodist Church here in Atlanta. Though retired from ministry, he is still a voice of biblical social relevance, and in 2009, as you will remember, he delivered for those of you that watched it, he delivered the benediction for the inaugural ceremony of President Barack Obama. He was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2009 and has twice been named as Atlanta Citizen of the Year, in an NAACP Lifetime Achievement Award honoree, and he has served dozens more humanitarian awards. That was my moment in history for Black History Week. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Senator on the 15th, point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. This morning, I rise on a point of personal privilege to discuss a dire circumstance that's occurring, could occur in the Fort Benning area of Columbus. Under the economic knife, we could stand to lose some 7,100 troops there, which obviously would have a dire economic effect on that area. And what I would like to do this morning is encourage all of us, because this would affect the entire state of Georgia, encourage all of us to send a letter to the Department of Army expressing your concern about what is going on, what is happening, how it will impact on your pocketbook. I had a neighbor of mine that called me the other day, and already on the civilian side of it, she said that they are being asked to prepare to lose what is tantamount to 4 days a month in jobs. So rather than working a 40-hour week, they would work 32 hours, and this could affect other military installations in the state of Georgia. So I would certainly encourage you to be alert to it, sound the alarm, send messages by way of email and whatever, snail mail and whatever else means we need to communicate the dire circumstance this could invoke upon our people there in the Columbus, Georgia area. A recent article said the assessment also estimates the group of federal employees and troops who may be affected have 4,000 spouses, 7,000 dependent children, bringing the total population impacted to just over 17,800 people. So it's a dire situation that could be dealt the southwest portion of our state that affects ultimately everybody in this state. And I would certainly encourage you to contact the Department of Army and send the message and let them know that this is something that we should think twice before we do. In addition, I know a lot of us travel to Columbus through that area, perhaps going to Albany and other areas, and you can see the improvements made there. You can just, when you go to I-185 South, you see the big entrance there, just highly effective, very panoramic and very effective, and it's something we can be proud of in the state of Georgia. To the tune, that cost us something like $57 million, foot bending, a $70 million expansion of I-185 from 4 to 6 lanes leading into the base there, passage of an educational special purpose local option sales tax projected to raise over $200 million. These are some of the infrastructure inputs, monetary inputs that we put into the fact that we're proud of Fort Benning, a maneuver center of excellence for many, many years. So we encourage you to join us in this fight, and myself along with the senator from the 29th, and let's stand together. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 45th on a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for allowing me and senators allowing me to have a point of personal privilege. As legislators, most of you know that Atlanta is our home away from home, and I consider it my home when I live down here, and even when I travel down here during the summer doing business here on Capitol Hill. But not just during the legislative session. I know I spend a lot of time over at 2 Peachtree. I know a lot of y'all spend a lot of time on North Avenue at the DOT building and going to meetings over there. So it really is no coincidence the fact that we pay attention to what is happening in the city of Atlanta, and we also read the Atlanta Journal-Constitution every morning when we come to work. So we really care about what happens in Atlanta and what happens to our capital city, because as Atlanta goes, the rest of the state of Georgia goes with it. Unfortunately, in the last couple of weeks, the Atlanta City Council has had to come to grips with a very frustrating, a very sensitive issue, and it's an issue that is very near and dear to my heart. It's also near and dear to your hearts too, because for the past 5 years in the General Assembly, we have worked on issues dealing with human trafficking. And specifically, we have worked on child sex trafficking. Child sex trafficking is a horrendous, degrading use of children for sex. It's a lot of adults receiving gratification from that. And unfortunately, it's a lot of people who make money off of these children by pimping these children. I'd like to read you a definition of what human trafficking is, and it comes from a professor who actually started on this topic at Kennesaw State University. She's a nursing school professor, and she has now written a book. It took her 2 years to write this book on human trafficking, and she describes child sexual exploitation. In large metropolitan areas, attract child predators and tend to be the hubs for the sale of sex with children. Ease of access, train stations, major highways, airports, bus depots, contribute to the exploitation with children because buyers of sex can easily reach the city and traffickers can easily move victims around. And that is exactly what is happening in the city of Atlanta. And it's unfortunate, as you all know, when we first started off on this topic, we received an F grade from the Polaris Project in Washington, D.C. And because we have recognized we have a problem, we have changed our state laws, we have created an infrastructure with a system of care, and we are educating the public, we have been elevated to a B as in boy, in our grade level from the Polaris Project. Recently, the Atlanta City Council responded to business complaints and decided to implement 2 pilot projects in the city. These pilot projects are called SOAPs, Stay Out of Areas of Prostitution. This is being promoted, is my understanding, by the Atlanta Police Department in response to those businesses. And they have asked the City Council to enact this legislation that basically would mandate banishment within certain areas of the city of prostitutes. I'd like to read you a response because the women in Georgia are outraged. How do you banish people? How do you remove people? If you remove these people from the area like around the MARTA station, where do they go? Do they move to Sandy Springs? Do they move to Decatur? Do they move to the south side? I'd like to read you what was in the newspaper. This was written by Stephanie Davis. It's a quote from her, and if you don't know Stephanie, most of you probably do. She is the executive director for Georgia Women for a Change. And it's right here in bold print. She says, banishment, really? Is it 2013? Are they going to stone them as they are taking them out of town? This doesn't solve the problem, and it is not good public policy. So I think with the upheaval that this potential new ordinance has caused, that the Atlanta City Council and their foresight and their wisdom has taken it off of the agenda, and it's my understanding that they have put it back into the committee process, and they're studying the issue. I encourage the police chief of the city of Atlanta, who I have met many times and who has appeared with me many times on the podium to address the issue of human trafficking, to reevaluate this initiative called SOAPs. To me, it's not good public policy either. And to the women of Georgia, it's not good public policy. It sounds, when you listen to it, it sounds great. But when you begin to start thinking about it and you're moving a group of people from one city block to another city block, all you're doing is moving the problem to another area to cause more problems in that particular area. And being from local government, I completely understand the desires and the wishes, the image of the city of Atlanta, the businesses in the city of Atlanta. But I compel them and ask them to please address the root problem. When I go to the MARTA station, I don't feel comfortable at all. And it's because of the street gangs.
Time, Senator, time.
Can I just finish up 1 second? There are many, many interventions on this topic. Many interventions. There are many national pilot projects that have been done around the country. I invite the City Council to study the topic thoroughly, to investigate it, and to not banish the women, to look at women as human beings. These women have children, these women have families, and this is not the correct thing to do. So I implore them to study the issue and consider the needs of all the women of Georgia. Thank you very much.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 48th, distinguished President Pro Tem, gentleman from Gwinnett County.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, pursuant to Senate Resolution 128 adopted yesterday, Today is Gwinnett County Day at the state capitol, and it is my privilege to recognize a delegation of civic, business, and community leaders from Gwinnett County here in the well. Commissioner Jace Brooks, Mayor Burnett, Mayor Mason, Mayor Chris, and other fine leaders from our community. If you would join us in welcoming, join me in welcoming them.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 29th, distinguished judiciary chairman, point of personal privilege. Then the senator from the 20th, and we'll cut off point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I usually get asked on this day of the year if I've run into a door or if I was having some trouble cleaning out the fireplace, but today is Ash Wednesday, for those of you that were asking that. And it is the beginning of the Lenten season that all Christians celebrate. And it is puts things in perspective when you begin your day and you're told, you know, you came from dust and to dust you shall return. Puts a lot of things that we're dealing with here in the proper perspective. And so I just hope you'll join me in this next 40 days of fasting and prayer and being mindful of the Lenten season that we're now entering. Thank you, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes senator from the 20th, point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to let y'all know I put a little article on your desk. It was an article in my hometown paper about Senator Gillis. And for all you folks that never got to serve with Senator Gillis, he was a great gentleman that chaired Senate Natural Resource Committee. And even after the changeover in the Senate, he still served as chairman of the Senate Natural Resource Committee because he is what a statesman ought to be. And he served for over 55 years in the General Assembly and was at one time the longest serving legislator in America. And so anyway, I would ask y'all to take a moment and read that little article. It's a short article, but I'm very fortunate to have spent 3 years here while he was still here. And I'm sorry that some of you never got to serve with him because people like him, if you watch them, you learn how to be a statesman and a leader for the state of Georgia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. Secretary will read a resolution.
Senate Resolution 50 by Senators Jeffries of the 17th and Jones of the 10th. A resolution recognizing and commending the Eagles Landing Christian Academy football team on their outstanding 2012 season and for other purposes. Whereas through perseverance and unwavering determination, the Eagles Landing Christian Academy Chargers maintained the state's #1 ranking in Class AAA football for all but 1 week of the 2012 season and went on to win the state championship. And whereas after beginning the season with 5-point loss to the Class AAA Washington County Golden Hawks, the Chargers won 13 games straight behind an offense that averaged a state-best 44 points per game and a defense that only allowed a state-best 7 points per game. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body commend the Eagles Landing Christian Academy football team for their record-breaking season and their state championship victory. Through with the order, Mr. President.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair is none. The resolution is adopted. Speak to the resolution and recognize these outstanding athletes. We call upon the senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think everybody's aware by now it is Henry County Day. But I got a special group here. In Henry County, we're kind of known for baseball, and we've won some state championships in baseball and softball. But Eagles Landing Christian Academy has brought us our first football state championship to Henry County. And I want to introduce Headmasters Chambers. The AD is Coach Queen, and a couple of the players that are up here is Cole Dillinger, Patrick Boucher, Jake Martin, Marquise Griffin, and Isaac Rochelle. And Isaac wants to say a few words, and Isaac just got a scholarship to Notre Dame.
How's it going? I want to start off by thanking you guys for having us and having our football team up, Representative Rutledge specifically. But just to say a few words about our team, sitting up there, we had a lot of just chemistry this season, and then the seniors up here with me, Patrick Busher, like he said, Cole Dillinger, Marquise Griffin, and Jake Martin. And a little bit about the coaches, we had a great coaching staff, and I think that's really what brought the team together. And then our administration, I think, I said it in the last meeting, I think the administration really pushes a football program and takes it to the next level and kind of dictates where your football program is. So that was huge for us. And then most importantly, we put our whole season behind Jesus Christ and just trusted in him and really moved along that path. So I appreciate you guys having us. Thank you.
Let's ask other football players to stand. We can recognize you. Congratulations. Proud of you. Very proud of you. Secretary, read a resolution.
Senate Resolution 223 by Senator Jones of the 10th. A resolution recognizing February 13, 2013 as Henry County Day at the State Capitol and for other purposes.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? Chair is none. The resolution is adopted.
Senate Resolution 224 by Senator Jones of the 10th. A resolution recognizing and commending Kay Pippin on the occasion of her retirement and for other purposes.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? Chair is none. The resolution is adopted.
Senate Resolution 225 by Senator Jeffries of the 17th. A resolution recognizing and commending Stacey L. Cotton and for other purposes.
Is there objection to resolution? Chair is none. The resolution is adopted.
Senate Resolution 226 by Senator Cowsert of the 46th. A resolution recognizing February 13, 2013 as University of Georgia School of Law Day at the State Capitol and for other purposes.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? Chair is none. The resolution is adopted.
Senate Resolution 227 by Senator Hill of the 32nd. A resolution recognizing and commending Stacey Osborne Duffy, Elementary Science Teacher of the Year and for the state of Georgia and for other purposes.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? Chair is none. The resolution is adopted.
Through with the order, Mr. President.
Any motions to withdraw or commit? Thank you. We're ready to move on to the general calendar. Let the word go forth that the Senate is about to take up SB 91. Very important bill, needs a lot of deliberation, and we have a very special presenting senator. Secretary will read.
Senate Bill 91 by Senator Harper the 7th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Title II of the OCGA relating to agriculture so as to repeal the Emerging Crops Fund Act, to repeal conflicting laws and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Agriculture recommends that this bill pass. Senator Wilkinson of the 50th. Through with the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the distinguished senator from the 7th. Recognized this time to present a very important bill to this very august body. Senator is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, today I bring before you SB 91, which is...
Senator, suspend just for a moment.
Yes, sir.
We're having some concerns in the back that they can't see you, if you don't mind.
Well, Senator, I was, Mr. President, I was actually looking for the step stool.
Senator, we have a little something for you to, that's much better, I think. Is that much better? Okay, good. Okay, I think
I know the distinguished chairman of the Rules Committee did so graciously provide this to me in the Rules Committee the other day, and I appreciate the members of the body and the President of the Senate for providing me the same courtesy, Mr. President, since I do have the challenging of the height ability, as do other members of this body. So, Mr. President, I guess I'll stay here. SB 91 is the repeal of the Emerging Crop Fund Act. It was enacted in 1990 after the ratification by the voters. It is a bipartisan bill that was brought forth by the Georgia Department of Agriculture, and it passed out of Agriculture Committee unanimously. And as I said, it repeals the Emerging Crop Fund Act. And for those who may be wondering what is an emerging crop is a crop that has not reached its full commercial potential. And it was set up to provide, to make interest loans on loans made to farmers for specialty crops such as blackberries, olives, etc. The act has never been used, never been appropriated. There have been no loans appropriated out of this act to date in its existence in over 20 years. Because of that, we are looking to repeal this act. The Georgia Development Authority is completely fine with the legislation, and actually the Development Authority has the ability to make low-interest loans to farmers already, and they can also get loans through USDA. And I have discussed this legislation with many farmers and many people that would be of concern to this legislation, since I arguably represent the largest ag district in the state of Georgia. They're fine with the repeal of this act because they know that they can get the funding that they would need through other means. And I would graciously ask the support of the Senate body in the passage of this bill. And Mr. President, at this time, I'm afraid to ask this question, but I have a feeling that there may be some questions regarding this legislation, but if not, I would yield the will.
There are a number of questions, as you might imagine. Obviously, this bill came out of the Ag Committee. I'm sure it was vetted, but based on the number of senators that have questions and concerns, it seems to be having a little trouble here on the floor. And as all of us know, this is a very deliberative body.
Yes, sir.
So the good thing is that I think now all the senators at least can see you, so that will help.
Well, Mr. President, I was wondering if I could step down, but I will remain standing up.
Chair.
If that is the will of the Senate.
Chair recognizes the distinguished rules chairman, senator from the 53rd.
Mr. President,
does the
senator yield?
I yield.
I appreciate you stepping up to this issue, too.
You're welcome.
Senator, I have some concern.
I understand.
This is a tremendous moral body.
Very much
and
so.
is, in most bills of significance, we always have a mention of moral turpitude. But I see it not mentioned in this bill. Does the senator have some problems with morality that he doesn't choose to put it in this bill?
No, Senator, I have no problems with morality, and I don't believe that moral turpitude should be mentioned in this bill, but moral turpitude is included in our Senate rules, specifically Section 1, Part 4.5.
I see the senator has done his homework.
I have, Senator.
Senator, further yield?
I'll further yield.
Well, could you give me the definition of moral turpitude?
Moral turpitude is an act or behavior that gravely violates the moral standards of society, Senator.
I believe you've been briefed on my question. Good work. Good job.
Thank you, Senator.
Chair recognizes senator from the 42nd. 42nd.
Well, Senator, yield.
I yield, Senator.
I notice in your bill that you have not included a strike-through of any of the portions of the act that you're repealing. Was that on purpose?
Senator, honestly, that is a good question. I thought that it was quite enough. That we have a bill that's only 2 lines long that specifically states that we repeal the Emerging Crop Fund Act instead of having a strike-through that is more pages long. I'm trying to conserve paper, Senator.
Well, will the senator further yield?
I yield, Senator.
I assume, based on that, then, that you reviewed the Emerging Crop Funds Act before you brought a bill to repeal it. Am I correct?
I did, Senator. Yes, sir.
Do you agree with the definition of emerging crops that it includes?
I'm sorry?
Do you agree with the definition of emerging crops included in the act that you're going to repeal?
I do, Senator.
Do you think we ought to support the growth of these crops? I mean, you're repealing an act that encourages people to grow peaches. I mean, do you not think, did you know this is the state of Georgia?
I understand, Senator, and you are correct that the Emerging Crop Act as presented includes peaches, but I would argue that peaches would not be considered an emerging crop today, as it is being commercially produced, especially by some distinguished members of this General Assembly. But I would also argue that because this act was never funded in the 20-plus years that it's been in existence, and no loans have been appropriated by this act, that it deserves the repeal. And that because farmers can receive loans that they so need or so desire through other means.
Can I ask, will you yield for a final question?
I'll yield for another question, yes, sir.
Did I take your criticism of the lack of funding to be a criticism of the distinguished chair of the Appropriations Committee?
No, sir, no, Senator, not at all. That is not a slide at the senator from the 4th by no means at all. And I trust that the senator from the 4th has had his deliberations quite fulfilling regarding any funding that has to be deserved in the budget of this great state.
All right, Chair recognizes Senator from the 18th.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Will the senator yield?
I yield.
Senator, are you aware that it is rare for me to sign a bill and then vote against it, but on occasion it does happen?
I understand that, Senator, and I appreciate your co-sponsorship of this legislation.
Will the senator further yield?
I yield.
Senator, how long have you been a senator?
That is, today is the 17th legislative day, I do believe, so 17 days.
In a few hours,
In a few hours.
Will the senator yield?
Yes, sir.
Do you really believe that after 17 days of being a senator, you have the experience to start repealing laws for the state of Georgia?
Senator, I do believe that I do. As a duly elected member of this body and a senator that was elected duly by the voters of the 7th District, they've sent me here to do the just dealings of our great state and my district, and I believe they've empowered me with that ability.
Senator, will you yield?
I yield.
You have a phrase in your bill that says to repeal conflicting laws. Would you please give us a list of the conflicting laws that we are repealing?
Senator, in all due respect, I do not believe there are any conflicting laws with this legislation, and I do not know why legal counsel decided to continue to put that in this legislation, but I will resort to their knowledge of the laws of the great state of Georgia.
Will the senator yield for one or two final questions?
I will, yes, sir, Senator.
Senator, are you familiar with the Georgia Constitution?
I am, Senator.
Will you continue to yield?
I will.
Are you familiar with Section 9, Paragraph 6, Section J specifically?
Not specifically, Senator, no.
Will the senator yield?
I will yield.
Senator, do you understand that in the Constitution of the state of Georgia, the General Assembly, and I'm reading from our Constitution, is authorized to provide by general law for the creation of an emerging crops fund? So you are doing away with something that is given to us as a power by the Georgia Constitution. Were you aware of that, Senator?
I am aware because in 1981, this act was initially presented, and then in 1983, it was a part of the amendment to the Georgia Constitution, which was ratified by the voters in 1990, which specifically amended the Constitution to allow for the creation of this act. Yes, sir.
Will the senator yield?
I will yield.
Senator, are you familiar with House Bill 1105?
No, sir, I am not.
Well, that's the law you're repealing. How could you not be?
Well, I appreciate your due diligence in making sure that I know what the law was and is. Thank you.
And Senator, will you yield for one final question, I promise?
Yes, Senator, I will.
Do you know Representative Tommy Smith, Representative Henry Reeves, and Representative Diane Harvey Johnson?
I do know Representative Tommy Smith, but not the others you mentioned, Senator.
Would you yield for just the follow-up to that?
And
I'm done. Why are you stepping on this law that was their life work and creation of those three House members, and today you are repealing that and trampling your feet upon their good work? Senator, I wish you well when we vote.
That's a very good point, Senator.
That is a good point, Senator.
Very good point. The audacity. Chair recognizes Senator from the 50th, the very distinguished agriculture chairman, has a few questions for the senator in the well.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
I'll yield, Senator.
To follow up with the senator from the 18th, I know it's rare for a person to sign a bill and vote against it, and I'm sure it's rare for a person to chair a committee where the bill comes from and votes against it, but the way things are going, I'm kind of conflicted right now.
Well, Senator, I would appreciate your due diligence and appreciate your support of this bill, as you did in committee.
But if you could just answer this for me, would you tell me the crops that are covered in this act, the emerging crops?
Well, the specific crops that were covered in this act were listed as blueberries, blackberries, strawberries, raspberries, asparagus, peaches, apples, grapes, pears, ornamental horticultural plants, Christmas trees, and fish farming, which shall include but not limited to crawfish, St. Peter's tilapia, freshwater shrimp, catfish, hybrid bass, and rainbow trout, but it is not limited to those specific crops.
Okay, I'm glad you mentioned tilapia.
You're welcome.
With that said, as both of us know, agriculture is a very diverse industry. We
Yes, it
spend
is, Senator.
millions of dollars, we invest in research, and there are crops that are being developed every day, as we know. There are going to be new crops that have never even been thought about today. So if we repeal this act, are you saying that there are not any more emerging crops on the horizon? That this is no longer, is that what you're saying? This is no longer
No,
needed?
Senator, that is not what I'm saying at all. I'm not saying that there are no longer emerging crops, but what I am saying is because of the unuse of this act and because we have not used this act, nor have we appropriated any funds to this act, nor have any loans been distributed through this act, that it should be repealed to help clean up our Georgia code, because that is good government. But on the flip side of that, farmers and ranchers that are producing specialty crops or producing emerging crops have the ability to receive funds through the department, the Georgia Development Authority, through low interest loans, and also through the United States Department of Agriculture through a specialty crop block grant that I believe we here in the state of Georgia also provide.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Pretty clear he believes in a lot of subsidies. Chair recognizes Senator from the 14th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the gentleman yield?
I will yield, and I do believe we're about the same height.
We do see eye to eye for once. If you'll yield for a couple of questions.
I will,
I'm really
Senator.
trying to figure out what I'm going to do on this bill. I've heard arguments on both sides, but if you could, am I assumed the short term that you've been in the Senate, this is your first bill?
This is my first bill, yes,
Okay,
Senator. The Senator is correct.
Being so as you, I'll be short. After hearing the questions from the senator from the 42nd regarding the funding of these emerging crops, is there a fiscal note associated with this bill?
No, Senator, there is no fiscal note associated with this particular piece of legislation.
Can you reiterate how much money has been spent over the past or during the life of this fund?
During the life of this specific fund, regarding this specific fund, no funds have been spent through this particular act or this particular fund.
So would it be fair for us to assume that one of the primary reasons that we're repealing this bill is the lack of the state's involvement has stunted the growth of this particular plan?
Senator, I would agree that the lack of the state's involvement has stunted the growth of this particular plan.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
I appreciate it.
Chair recognizes an individual now who obviously has been named by the senator in the well and certainly doesn't understand what seniority means in the Senate. Chair recognizes Senator from the 4th, the Distinguished Appropriations Chairman at this time.
Senator Yield.
I will yield, Senator.
Senator, you've been here, as you stated earlier, 17 days. I believe I've seen some notices floating around about the rural caucus. Have you been active in the rural caucus?
I have, Senator.
Yeah, you see, y'all have had a couple of meetings.
We have.
Has the rural caucus taken a position on the legislation that you're presenting today?
Senator, we have not specifically taken a position, and that is a fault of my own.
I guess I'm trying to figure out, are you not the least uncomfortable with the fact that this legislation, waiting on a leader to step forward to fund it, and your first act as a legislator is to do away with something that could have been extremely valuable for every farmer in the state. I'm trying to figure out how you come to represent rural Georgia, and your first act is to do away with rural legislation.
Senator, I understand the concerns that Senator from the 4th may have, but I would digress and state that, as I've stated, that the funding that farmers may need for items such as this can be and shall be provided if they so desire through the Georgia Development Authority or through USDA.
Senator, yield further.
Yes, Senator, I will.
Are we to expect?
Hold on just one second, Senator. In your defense, just yes, sir, and no, sir, from this point forward. Go ahead, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator, just to be clear then, if you do yield,
I do yield, yes,
one
sir.
final question. Just to be sure that we all understand, we are then to expect, are we not, that you're going to come forward with some legislation that will truly help agriculture and rural parts of our state as you get past these first days, however unsteady they may be, of your legislative career?
You are correct in that, Senator. I will do my best to fight for South Georgia, specifically rural Georgia, and especially the agricultural community as I move forward in my Senate career. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes a senator who has done an awful lot with the olive oil industry, and along with many other ag, one of the very distinguished senators, senator from the 19th.
Senator, I have to say, as a member of the Short Man's Caucus, I'm very disappointed in you today.
Uh-oh.
Senator, isn't it true that the people of your district, which includes a number of counties down there, knew how tall you were when they sent you up here?
Actually, Senator, I do believe they do. To tell you a short story, on numerous occasions, I was told that I looked taller on my billboards.
Senator, I was also told I sounded taller on the radio. But Senator, I was sort of hoping that you would be confident in your height and not feel the need to have to stand on a stool this morning. But that being as it may, I'm sure you'll soon figure it out that you're fine, just how tall you are.
Well, I appreciate that, Senator.
Senator, I do have a concern about the bill, and the senator from the 4th mentioned it. Senator, when you read off this list of crops that were on this emerging crop list, there were a few, such as the representative from down in Lakeland has spent his own money at $5,000 an acre to grow some olives, and that really may be an emerging crop. I've planted a few myself in hope that happens, but there were a number of crops on that list that have never emerged.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't any money, and I'm kind of like the senator from the 4th. If you'd have been advocating since the beginning of the session with the senator for some money to help emerge these crops, that they might just make Georgia a new peach.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. No comment. And I'm going to step down.
Yeah.
Because I am confident in my height.
He's not yielding.
Oh,
you can't yield the well. He's just stepping down where nobody can see him. Chair recognizes senator from the 54th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
I'll yield.
Senator, we are somewhat, but possibly less familiar with the ways of agriculture in North Georgia, so I will hope that you can educate me about that field as well as my concerns about this bill. Most farmers I know, Senator, have lots of tools, and oftentimes there's a tractor that sits back in the barn that hadn't been used for a while. Is that your experience?
Senator, I guess I would agree. Yes, sir.
Well, Senator, you make reference to all these other avenues that farmers have, but isn't it true that sometimes there's just one tool that you need and you don't need it that often? Couldn't this be the tool for some farmer in Georgia that is unused?
Senator, you make a great argument for the continuance of this act, but again, I would argue that our farmers and ranchers here in the great state of Georgia have the ability to receive funding through other means other than this, and because this act has not been used through the Georgia Development Authority, it is a great day to repeal it.
Well, thank you, Senator. I'm sure mules all over the state of Georgia will be glad to hear that their services will no longer be needed because we've got tractors. But, Senator, will you further yield for some questions?
I yield.
Senator, you said earlier, I believe, in response to a question that you would no longer consider peaches an emerging crop in Georgia. Is that right?
Senator, I would divert to the expertise and the knowledge of those in the peach industry, but I would say that I think it could be argued that peaches today are commercially produced, especially in the middle part of our state, and because they are in commercial production, that would no longer meet the definition of an emerging crop.
Well, Senator, that's my question. Is it your position then that peaches in Georgia have reached their full commercial potential and there is no need for us to expand our peach crop?
Oh, no, Senator, I do not mean that by no sense of the imagination. I do encourage those peach crop growers in the great state of Georgia to continue to find ways to help them fund their operations, and they can do so through specialty crop grants and through low interest loans through the Georgia Development Authority.
Will the Senator continue to yield?
I continue to yield.
Senator, there is reference to this in this bill that you're repealing to fish. Now, you might help me because we may have definitions that are different, but I see shrimp and crawfish. And I was never under the impression that a creek lobster was in fact a fish. Is it or is it not a fish?
According to the definition in the code, it is a fish.
Okay, well,
Senator.
Well, I appreciate you repealing that part because we might have some confusion about that. Senator, will you yield for
I further yield.
For a final
Somebody's
question?
swimming upstream too, by the way.
Senator, you have made reference a couple times to the ratification by the voters of Georgia of the 1983 Constitution in 1990. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you indicated that this act became law as a result of that ratification by the voters of Georgia. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
Senator, how is it then that as a gentleman who represented himself and campaigned as a conservative and a limited government close to the people sort of senator, can you say that we as a legislative body should repeal the act that the voters engaged in directly and approved?
Senator, that is a good question, but I would offer the opposite of that, saying that by repealing a law, we are creating good government, smaller government, and not to create any slight at my height by no means by stating smaller, but again, this act has never been funded, and because of so, it's never been used, and is seen as a duplication of some loan options that farmers have on the books already.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator in the well, probably the best advice that I could give a new senator like yourself is that there is a phrase, and if you're a very wise man, you will repeat after me. Mr. President, I yield the well.
Mr. President, at this time, I graciously yield the well, and I appreciate the due diligence of this body and would appreciate your support. Thank you.
Nice job. Nice job.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is the objection granted? Report to committee. Senator from 33rd, what purpose do you rise?
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. President.
State your inquiry. Dean of the Senate.
Is it not true that many of these senators that have been asking questions have not been here long enough to know that not only will you sign a bill and occasionally vote against it, it may occur that you speak in favor of it and then sit down and vote against it. Is that not? That
is true, Senator. You've been known to play on both sides of the fence from time to time, too. Now, does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is the objection granted? Report to committee which favor pass the bill? Chair hears none. Report to committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none. Main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? The question is on the eradication of the agriculture community in the state of Georgia. All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. It's not looking good early out of the gate. This horse is falling way behind. I'm glad we got folks that want to support ag. I'd hate to see the senator lose his first bill. I beg some of you to switch from red to green. I'm just begging you, please. Thank you very much. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 51, the nays are 0. This bill having received requisite constitutional majority is therefore passed. Chair recognizes Senator from the 18th.
Mr. President, pursuant to Senate Rule 7-1.10b, I would like to serve notice upon the Senate to ask for the Senate to take up the House substitute to Senate Bill 26 tomorrow.
Read the caption.
Senate Bill 26 by Senator Staton of the 18th and Jones of the 25th. A bill to be entitled an act to provide that future elections for the office of coroner of Bibb County shall be nonpartisan elections, to provide for submission of this act under the Federal Voting Rights Act of 1965 as amended, to provide for related matters and for other purposes. Through with the order, Mr. President.
This is only notice. It's not debatable. Only notice, serving notice. Not debatable. Senator from 26, you wish to, what purpose you rise? What purpose does the senator from the 26 rise?
Point of order, Mr. President.
State your inquiry.
Since I'm new over here, I'm just trying to navigate between the rules. So you say it's not debatable, so there is no debate on the...
Not today. He's just serving notice. That's all he's doing.
Thank you, sir, very much.
Chair now recognizes Senator from the 18th again.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate stand adjourned until 9 a.m. Thursday, February 14th.
9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Read the announcements.
Rules will meet upon adjournment in 4:50 cap. Natural Resources and Environment will meet in 4:50 cap at 1 p.m. Banking and Finance also at 1 p.m. in 307 CLOB. Special Judiciary at 2 p.m. in Mez 1. Judiciary Non-Civil will meet at 3 p.m. in 307 CLOB. And Judiciary in 4 p.m. in 307 CLOB. Veterans, Military, and Homeland Security will meet in Mez 1 at 4 p.m.
The majority whip is moved. The Senate stand adjourned until 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. All those in favor will say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes clearly have it. We stand adjourned.